Hello, I'm William Gallagher, and this is 58 Keys, which as always, is for writers like you and me who use and write on Macs and iPhones and iPads. Do subscribe because, there's so much to discuss, including this time, something a bit new for me. I've been asked, what do I think of the iPad Pro after having had one for 6 months? It's actually nearer 8 now, but it was 6 when I was asked. I suspect I've taken 2 entire months to work this through because the answer is both ridiculously simple, I adore it, and distressingly obvious, I wouldn't buy it today. Don't let me make this sound like I'm building up to a big dramatic conclusion. I'll just tell you straight now, the reason I would not buy it these days is some months after getting it, I got a MacBook Pro. And if it had been the other way around, MacBook Pro first, I'd have wanted the iPad, but I couldn't really, I think, have justified the cost. And as it is, I am so glad that it was the way around it was and that I got this iPad Pro. Let me tell you what I think is great about it for you and me as writers, then at least one tiny bit that's less great. First, what I got in mid-2021, so you know what I'm talking about, is an 11-inch iPad Pro with 256 gigabytes of storage. It was a Wi-Fi only model and it cost, let me wince for a second, £849. I then later got the £279 Magic Keyboard, and that's actually part of what's great about the machine, but it's separate. We'll come to that. What I use this for now is, well, certainly for meeting notes, definitely including Otter transcription when I'm interviewing somebody, a studio clock occasionally, New Year's countdown was done it. I use it actually as a monitor when I want to talk to you on 58 Keys. If I've got lots to do, I'll take it away and work on my OmniFocus to-do list from it. Cooking, I cook from recipes. I particularly like reading in bed from it at night, the way it changes the light to match your eyes things. Especially on the build up to Christmas, I was waiting for deliveries and things. I use it as a front camera. I do write on it, though that is actually the big thing that's moved over to the MacBook Pro. I will always use this when I am chairing an event because I can have my notes and a clock right there on my lap. The impetus to buy though, one, I had this 12.9-inch iPad Pro from 2015, the original iPad Pro, and for a year or more it had been eccentric, misbehaving. Bits of the screen stopped recognizing touch, so I found I would have to keep rotating the screen until the thing I wanted to tap was at a point where I could tap it. And then this Friday morning, one Friday morning, sitting down to write my weekly self-distract blog, nothing could be touched. Nothing would work. It wouldn't switch on at all. It was a dead iPad Pro, and it stayed that way. It has stayed that way. It's in my office drawer over there, hoping for some future miracle. Naturally then on that morning, you do the thing you've got to do. I wrote on something else. I think it was my iPhone. Actually, it was fine, yeah. But it still felt like I'd lost an old friend. 6 years or so I'd had that. And it did mean that I also, wanted to replace it. Let me tell you, there's a whole 58 Keys special about how to determine which is the right iPad for you as a writer whenever it is that you need to buy one. And I ignored all my own advice. I said it in the piece. I said, you got to go your own way. And I did. I ignored my own advice because I wanted an iPad Pro again. Not an iPad Air, not the entry-level iPad, not an iPad Mini. Really what I wanted was another 12.9-inch iPad Pro, but that was just impossible to afford for me at the time. So I got the 11-inch one, and I rationalized spending even that amount, which is still hundreds more than the cheaper possible options, because of these 2 major reasons. Since the iPad Pro now has the M1 Apple Silicon chip in it, the same as in my Office Mac Mini, this iPad Pro it's a very powerful machine, and powerful also means it's going to last for me for a long time. It's going to be fine with whatever software comes along, whatever changes come along in the next many years. And with this one piece of glass, there's practically nothing in my writing business that I wouldn't be able to do on it and with it. Some stuff's more awkward on an iPad than on a Mac, but it's all doable, everything that I do. So with this one little device, I could go out, travel around, and yet continue to do all of my work. And those were the 2 main realistic reasons, but there were 2 smaller ones as well. And one was practical. I knew at the time that I was going to be presenting a workshop in public again a couple of months later, and I did that. I presented from the iPad Pro. That bit, the technology went so well. And, well, this is less practical, but it's certainly more heartfelt. At the time it went wrong, I was a few days away from going away for a few days. It was first holiday in 2 years, something like that, and I'd been stocking up on books and scripts to read on the old iPad, and I wanted to read and relax. So I did it. I bought the iPad Pro. And then when the holiday didn't cost quite as much as I was expecting for some glorious reason, I had the money left over to buy the Magic Keyboard. I had ordered it before we'd left the hotel. The Magic Keyboard is an extra cost and it is an extra accessory, but I think it's actually fundamental to why this iPad Pro is so good for me. But as I said, there are things to dislike. I mean, nothing massive, not certainly compared to how much you can dislike the price, but they are there. I do still miss, actually, the 12.9-inch screen I had on my 2015 iPad Pro. This one does feel cramped to me, but it is a better screen. It has True Tone for altering it during the day to help your eyes. Pro Motion for speeding up a bit as you're watching. I don't actually notice that. And it's also much brighter, which I do definitely notice. And it unquestionably, it's a handier size too. Except oddly, the fact that it's smaller than my old one makes it feel heavier. It isn't. This is 468 grams, where my old 12.9-inch one was 723 grams. But because it's concentrated, it feels heavier. I'm conscious then that it's not as easy to hold as a Kindle, for instance, although it's so much more useful. And to me, the text on it, even in the iPad's Kindle app, it's so much better than an actual Kindle that I don't care. I don't care, but I notice, and I keep noticing it. And despite, this is not really a criticism of the iPad, it's more of me, despite how much I use it, I'm conscious that the reason for buying it, this thing of being able to run my whole business through it, now that I've got the iPad, the MacBook Pro, that's not so true anymore. It's still a little true, it's definitely true in a pinch, but it's not the major use that I thought it was going to be. So actually, yeah, I could have bought the cheaper iPad Air and still have been able to use a Magic Keyboard, or the even cheaper iPad, which would have saved even more money, because that doesn't work with the Magic Keyboard. The Magic Keyboard, let me talk about this separately because, well, it's literally a separate thing. As a keyboard, it is superb. Hands down, the best iPad keyboard I've ever used, and I have tried quite a few. So I cannot fault the keyboard. I don't want to fault the keyboard. As a case, though, I'm really conscious that actually, let me show you, it protects the back and when you fold it up the front of the iPad, but it doesn't even really try to protect the sides. There's a slight edge there, and the corners are bare. And actually, it's when you prang a corner that you can get some serious damage to an iPad. I do have to take the iPad out of the case whenever I'm just going to read. Since I like to read in portrait, I like the case gets in the way. I mean, fine, and you see how easy it is, but sometimes a little extra inconvenience. And I preferred how on the 12.9-inch I used to have a kind of wrap-around cover that made it very easy to just open up and read. But then it was kind of rubbish for when you wanted to prop up the iPad to type on. So, roundabouts, swings. Overall, sensible, practical conclusion, no, I would not have bought this iPad Pro if I'd got the MacBook Pro first, but only because of the cost. I mean, it's serious cost. I'm not knocking that. I have no criticism of the, well, you know, you've heard the odd criticism of it, but overall, it is a superb device. And look at it this way: you just try taking it away from me, okay? Cost is what would have stopped me buying what would feel like an extra device when the MacBook Pro gives me pretty much all the portability and certainly more of the capabilities I need for working. I could sell the iPad Pro now, but that's not, no, that's not going to happen. The pain point with Apple Gear is when you pay for the things. But once you've managed that, their worth is superb. True, I do not use this quite as much as I did before I got the MacBook Pro. True, I don't use it for all of the same things I did before I got that. So, true, it is less use to me than it was, but I still use it much more than I expected. I still wipe out the battery every other day. And in a funny way, I think I'm enjoying it more. I mean, for all that its purpose and what I use it for is serious work, it's the device I pick up at the end of a long day and I just want to read. It's become a pleasure. So if I can argue that the cheaper iPads would do as much, and I might well argue that, my 6 or 8 month conclusion is that I adore this iPad Pro and its Magic Keyboard. That's it for this edition of 58 Keys. I think It's the first time I've done a kind of longish term review of Apple hardware. Would you mind letting me know, please, in the comments if this kind of thing is any use to you at all? I have quite a lot of thoughts about the iPhone 13 Pro, for instance. But for now, do please take care of yourself. Write more on the iPad or anything else, you know, short of pen and paper. Come on. And I'll see you soon.